Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today's story is about a man who played the long game. When his coworker sabotaged his shot at a promotion, he didn't yell, he didn't gossip, he waited, planned, and struck when the opportunity came. And it was devastatingly effective. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Promotion sabotage gone wrong for Murray. I work for a great company that I genuinely liked. The work was good, the team was supportive, and for the most part, it was a place where I felt respected. I get along with just about everyone. I'm easygoing, friendly, and not the type to pick fights, except when it came to Murray. To this day, I couldn't tell you what it was about him. Sometimes you just meet someone and there's a mutual dislike that can't be explained away. Murray was that person for me. There was no one big incident that started it all, no blowout argument, no drama. We just didn't like each other. I was still professional about it. I worked with him when I had to, did my job, and kept my personal feelings out of it. For a while, it wasn't a big deal. Then I was up for a promotion. It was basically down to me and one other guy. I'd worked hard, had good performance reviews, and felt like I was a strong candidate. The other guy was good too, but I genuinely thought I had a solid shot. And I didn't get it. I was disappointed, but prepared to accept it gracefully, until a mutual friend pulled me aside and told me something that lit me on fire. Apparently, Murray had gone out of his way to personally speak to the hiring manager and badmouth me. Not just casually mentioning something negative, he went full-on sabotage mode, telling them things that likely cost me the promotion. The hiring manager never said anything to me directly, but knowing that Murray had intentionally tanked my shot at moving up, that burned. I didn't lash out right away. I didn't start gossiping or try to get even in some petty way. Instead, I waited. Murray had a big mouth, and one of the things he loved to brag about was his drinking. He was a bit of an alcoholic. He'd drink heavily at company events, and he loved talking about how he could always drive home without getting caught. He'd brag about knowing where the police set up checkpoints, which routes to take to avoid them, and how he'd never once been pulled over after drinking. So when our company had a staff party coming up, I had an idea. At the party, Murray did exactly what Murray always did. He got sloppy drunk. I stayed late enough to see him stumbling toward the exit. Once I was sure he was leaving and getting behind the wheel, I quietly stepped outside, called the police, and reported a possible drunk driver. I gave them his plate number, description of his car, and the road he was taking home. It wasn't long before I heard that he'd been pulled over and arrested for driving under the influence. He lost his license on the spot. Since he lived out of town, this was a massive problem for him. He suddenly had no way to get to work, he had to rely on coworkers for rides, and since he wasn't exactly well-liked, that didn't go smoothly for him. And because he was coming from a work event, his direct manager got in hot water too for letting an employee leave intoxicated. That part was extra sweet for me because that same manager had known exactly what Murray did to sabotage me and had done nothing about it. Now he was dealing with the fallout right alongside Murray. Murray ended up with a hefty fine, lost his license for months, and came very close to losing his job. Even after he got his license back, the incident stuck with him. His reputation at work took a huge hit, and the promotion he and his buddy had fought to keep me from getting, neither of them were even considered for the next round. It took months, but when I finally saw him sitting there grumbling about how unfair it all was, I couldn't help but smile. Revenge is so much sweeter when you play the long game. Murray thought he could mess with my career and get away with it, but in the end, I hit him where it hurt most. And I didn't even have to break a sweat. It's one thing to clap back at someone who wronged you, but it's another to let time, patience, and karma do the heavy lifting. You played it smart, and in the end, Murray took himself out of the running. And our second story. This house is mine. Nope, Karen, you're wrong. When we bought our house, we were over the moon. It was exactly what we wanted, not brand new, but full of charm with just enough projects to make it feel like ours. We knew it would take some work, but that was part of the fun. On moving day, as the last box came off the truck, I saw the neighbor next door. Perfect chance to start off on the right foot, right? I waved cheerfully. She glared at me. Okay, maybe she was having a bad day. I brushed it off and decided to introduce myself properly. I walked over and said hello, but before I even got halfway through my sentence, she turned around and stormed inside without a word. A few minutes later, the neighbor across the street wandered over with a sympathetic look on his face. "Ah," he said, nodding toward the house next door, "so you've met Karen." Apparently, Karen had been eyeing our house for years. She and her husband owned the house across the street and had wanted this one for their adult son, or possibly to flip for profit. When the house went on the market, she made an offer. But it was laughably low and loaded with conditions. We, on the other hand, had been house hunting for 8 months. The moment this one hit the market, we went in full price with an escalation clause and even wrote a heartfelt letter about how much we loved the house and wanted to raise our family there. The sellers and estate chose us. Apparently, Karen has never forgiven us. From that moment on, she made sure everyone knew we had overpaid and ruined the comps for the neighborhood. The thing is, we'd done our homework. We'd seen every waterfront property under $550K in this area, and even factoring in the $50K of renovations we planned, this house was the best deal by far. But Karen just couldn't get over the fact that we'd taken her house. At first, we let her sulking roll off our backs. Some people just need time to adjust. But then she escalated. First came the passive-aggressive notes, little slips on paper in our mailbox about where we'd placed our trash cans, comments about keeping up appearances. Then she started complaining that we trimmed our own hedge too aggressively and claimed it was damaging her view. When we had contractors redoing the porch, fully permitted, fully legal, she actually called the city to complain. That's when we realized this wasn't just a grumpy neighbor, this was a full-blown campaign to make us miserable. The final straw came when we caught her cutting across our yard with her dog off-leash, letting it sniff and dig in our lawn like it was her personal park. When my wife asked her politely to please stop trespassing, Karen smirked and said, "This should have been my yard anyway." That was it. We installed cameras covering every inch of the front and side yard and put up very clear no trespassing signs. Within a week, we had video of her doing it again. This time, we filed a report with the HOA and sent her a certified letter warning her that future trespassing would result in police involvement. Karen, of course, doubled down. A few weeks later, she started screaming at one of my contractors in the driveway, claiming his truck was blocking her view. The contractor recorded the whole thing and sent it to me, and I sent it straight to the HOA. That seemed to finally get through to them. The HOA fined her for harassment and trespassing. Then, just to really drive the point home, the city hit her with a citation for repeatedly trimming our plants over the property line without permission. The best part came last weekend during a community event. Karen tried to rally the neighbors to boycott us, loudly insisting we were bad for the neighborhood. But no one took her side. In fact, several neighbors came by later to apologize for her behavior, explaining she's been a problem for years and they were glad someone was finally standing up to her. Now, Karen won't even look at us. She shuffles from her car to her house like we don't exist, and her house just went up for sale. I don't know where she's going, and frankly, I don't care. All I know is that watching her finally pack up and leave will feel like the sweetest housewarming gift we could have ever asked for. Sometimes the best revenge is just living well, right where she always thought she should be. She spent all that time trying to make you miserable, and in the end, you get the last laugh, enjoying your porch, your hedge, and your lawn without her lurking around. You got exactly what you wanted when you bought the house in the first place. Peace and quiet on your terms. And our last story. The day revenge was boundless. If my grandpa had known my house would burn down because of Karen, he probably would have burned it himself instead of leaving it to me. The last time I stopped by the country place, everything was fine. I locked the door and left. The next time I came back, there was a pile of ash and a court summons. I never planned to live there full-time. I wanted to finish the renovation and sell. It was too far from work. The neighbors didn't help either. On one side, a grandma with 4 cats and 3 dogs who's deaf when she doesn't want to hear and has radar hearing for gossip. On the other side, Karen and her 20-year-old gangster son with 2 priors. Karen's always snow white and innocent, while everyone else is to blame. While I was on vacation, the conflict ripened. Karen's son hauled in a rusty V8 barge with no muffler, roaring at 4 in the morning. I calmly told him to cut it out. He tried to start a fight. 3 seconds later, he was on the gravel squeaking, "I give up." Then he blocked my driveway. I called a tow truck. After some fence line threats, he slunk off. When I went back to my night shift at the club, Karen's son broke the padlock and started parking in my garage. For atmosphere, he raked piles of dry leaves in there. After one of his runs, he pulled in a hot car. 20 minutes later, the leaves caught, then the garage, the house, and his car with it. They dragged me from work. It took me 4 hours to drive back. By the time I arrived, the firefighters were wrapping up. Karen shrieked, "He torched my son's car," and rushed to sue me. I calmly gathered the facts, the broken lock bagged as evidence, doorbell cam video of her son hauling leaves into my garage, the tow report noting an overheated catalytic converter and leaks, the grandma's statement about doors slamming at night. The fire inspector's report said it all. Point of origin under the car. Cause spontaneous ignition of dry debris from hot components. Entry to the premises by breaking the lock. Their suit against me collapsed with a clatter. Then came the criminal side. The prosecutor charged Karen's son with burglary, trespass, intentional property damage, reckless endangerment, and reckless burning/arson-related counts with prior offenses considered. No plea would stick. The video, the inspector's report, his record, and the forced entry stacked up like bricks. A jury found him guilty on the main counts, sentenced 3 years in state prison, mandatory restitution to me and my insurer, and a restraining order after release. In civil court, I sued them both, son and Karen. Karen for defamation, a knowingly baseless lawsuit, and incitement. Her son for unlawful entry, destruction of property, and gross negligence. The court heard them together and apportioned liability. The ruling was music. 70% liability on the son, primary cause of the harm, 30% on Karen, negligence, defamation, abuse of process. Separately, the court awarded me attorney's fees and punitive damages for the brazen violation of property rights. The son got saddled with the lion's share of restitution, essentially all costs to rebuild the shell, roof, electrical, debris removal, temporary housing, and diminished value. A judgment lien attached to his assets and future wage garnishment after release. Karen was hit for her 30%, and on top of that had to reimburse my costs of defending against her baseless suit. While the son was inside, I worked. Cleared the lot, ordered a new frame, ran new electrical, installed a fire alarm system with direct dispatcher link, welded steel gates, and added bollards so no hero could drive where they shouldn't. The grandma brought cookies, said, "Now I'm definitely deaf, permanently," and winked. 9 months later, the house gleamed with fresh paint. A buyer showed up, a retired police officer. Calm, clipped in speech, sharp on details. He walked the rooms, looked over my sensors, the gates, the work orders, and said, "Good work, and a good story with the right ending." We shook hands. I sold the fully repaired house to him, a man for whom order is more than a word. On closing day, I took one last look around and stepped onto the porch. Karen stood across the street. Without her hero, without the screaming, just the shadow of court orders and liens on her accounts. My grandpa used to say, "You don't have to shout the truth, you have to file it." I filed it. The court jailed him, the accounts went ding, and the house went to a new owner. A cop who'll keep the peace where it's deserved. And that's how the day came when my revenge was boundless. Most of it landed on the one who dragged dry leaves into my garage, and the law put a period at the end. The police officer will bring new qualities to Karen's son's life when he finally gets out of prison. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.